Rawteur. Lately, Hollywood has been slapping familiar names on unfamiliar stories and blaming you when it doesn't land. I call it the nostalgia scam. Take the Crow remake. In the original, the villain was just a scummy gang leader. Gritty, grounded, human. But in the 2024 version, we get Vincent Rogue, a literal demon man with glowing eyes and supernatural powers. So now, instead of a revenge story, it's Eric Draven versus Hot Topic Voldemort. And while fans generally love the Skarsgårds, this felt like a parody of itself. I mean, the hard truth is, original ideas are risky. You can have the best script, the strongest cast, a visionary director, and still completely flop. But if you slap the words Star Wars, Batman, or Scooby-Doo on a project, you've already won half the battle. You're not selling a story anymore, you're selling a memory. And memories are profitable. As a standalone movie called The Princess and the Apple, with no ties to the original or political soundbites from the lead, this movie might have done just fine. But they called it Snow White. It's a fairy tale, a children's story, and both parents and kids are drawn to it for the same reason: nostalgia. For the parent, it's a memory from childhood. For the kid, maybe it's the Disney Plus version they just watched last week. Different timelines, but the same expectation. Now, if you'd never heard Rachel Zegler's interviews about the changes to the story, you might walk into that theater expecting the Snow White you remember.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
And leave completely blindsided. And honestly, you'd be right to feel disappointed. But here's the thing. A lot of people did hear those interviews, and instead of adjusting their expectations, it turned into a firestorm. Her comments became the catalyst for people to hate everything about the movie, details they might have otherwise ignored. Either way, it all comes down to one thing. The studio didn't meet the audience where they were. They used the name Snow White, but delivered something else. See, studios don't chase originality. They chase predictability, because predictability makes shareholders feel safe. Take the Continental, a prequel set in the John Wick universe. Sounds promising, right? But instead of the slick action and mythic tone fans loved, we got a slow burn prestige drama. And whether it was good or bad is debatable, but what's not debatable is why it got made in the first place. Familiarity. That was the hook. And when it didn't deliver what people expected, it got canceled. In Hollywood, there's a term called franchise synergy, where you've got boardrooms filled with MBAs pitching spreadsheets instead of screenplays, where the logic is simple. Why build a new world when you can dust off a title, modernize the cast, and let nostalgia do the marketing? Essentially, let's milk this IP for all it's worth. But it's deeper than just laziness. There's a three-tiered system propping up this whole strategy. First is that you should clap the like button. Seriously though, if you've ever wondered why there are so many reboots, remakes, and adaptations popping up all over the place, here's why. SEO boosting, algorithmic loyalty, and risk management. SEO boosting is why legacy IPs dominate Google, YouTube, and TikTok. Think about it. A Bel Air trailer will always outrank new gritty drama set in Philly, right? In terms of algorithmic loyalty, Netflix, Prime, and let's say Disney Plus all push familiar names to the front of the queue. They know you're more likely to click what you've already heard of, even if the content is brand new. And when it comes to risk management, investors don't want art. They want ROI. Return on investment. And IP is as close as it gets to a guaranteed ROI without divine intervention. IP is the cozy blanket that lets you greenlight a mediocre pitch because, hey, it worked before. See, the IP doesn't need to be used the same way. It just needs to borrow the vibe. That's the loophole. That's where the scam starts. And here's where the misdirection creeps in. These projects market themselves as legacy extensions, but when the content doesn't match, studios retreat to a canned excuse: we're reimagining this for a new audience. Okay, fair enough, but if it's for a new audience, why are you leeching off of the original's cachet? That's not nostalgia, that's bait. That's like selling a vintage car, delivering a smart car, and saying, oh, you thought it would drive like the original? No. This is the 2025 version. What we're seeing is an industrial process that uses familiarity as a Trojan horse. The exterior says, you remember this, right? Well, this new one was made specifically for you. However, the interior, the bones of it, is maximized for quadrant appeal. Because that's the end game, right? To hit every demographic, everyone, everywhere, watching everything at once. But the cost is authenticity and the trust of the very audience they claim to respect. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying new interpretations can't work. They can. I mean, Bel Air pulled it off, at least until Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, and then suddenly nobody wanted to talk about any Will Smith project. Cobra Kai also pulled it off, but those shows knew what people loved about the originals. They didn't just wear the name, they respected the soul, right? Today's problem is that the soul doesn't matter, the metrics do. And as long as a recognizable name can generate a spike in subscriptions, a wave of tweets, or just enough YouTube thumbnails to simulate buzz, the scam will keep working. That is, until we stop falling for it. To me, bait and switches feel like a personal violation because you didn't just waste your time, you got played. I mean, that's why I started putting my face on some of the thumbnails. I didn't want you clicking in expecting a flashy montage of movie clips only to be met with my handsome mug for 90% of the runtime, right? I'm being upfront. Hollywood, not so much. When their marketing misfires and audiences push back, studios don't take the blame. They blame the audience. Suddenly, it's your fault for not evolving. You're the one who can't let the story grow. You're entitled. But let's be honest, that's just corporate gaslighting, a way to cover for false advertising with plausible deniability. That's the scam in motion. Hook the original fan base with nostalgia, then pivot and claim it's for a new audience once the backlash hits. And the fire doesn't stop there. Critics and clickbait grifters fan the flames from opposite ends. Major outlets prop up the studio's narrative because, let's be real, access journalism is still alive and well. It's the same dynamic we've seen in the gaming world. Stay friendly, keep getting early access, play nice. Then you've got YouTube grifters on the other side nitpicking every frame and blowing plot holes out of proportion, sometimes flat out lying to stoke outrage. So now, any critique, even a fair one, drops you into a cultural crossfire you didn't ask to join. Without realizing it, the scam has gaslit you into silence. Critique the change, you're one of the many phobes. Ask why a beloved story was reworked from the ground up. You're resistant to progress. Speak up at all, you get lumped in with people who are more interested in clout than critique. It's a no-win scenario. If we were to reset the narrative, it's that not every reboot needs to be a shot-for-shot remake. Innovation is welcome, but if you're going to advertise something as the return of an icon, but then strip out everything that made it iconic, that's not bold, it's bait. And it's happening again and again. We have to start asking why they're reviving certain franchises in the first place. Is it because there's a real creative vision that fits that universe, or is it just because the name tests well in a focus group? If it's the latter, then what we're watching isn't a reboot, it's brand exploitation. It's product placement wearing a costume. And until we start calling it what it is, the bait and switch will keep working. Not because it's good, but because it's easy. And studios are banking on you getting tired of complaining. Let's be fair though, nostalgia isn't the villain, it's a tool. And like any tool, it can build or destroy depending on who's wielding it. There are reboots that work. reimaginings that expand the legacy instead of hijacking it. And when they do, they earn new fans and keep the old ones coming back. But for every Cobra Kai, there's a Velma. For every Top Gun Maverick, there's a live-action Powerpuff Girls. So what's the difference? Why do some succeed while others feel like identity theft? If we look at Cobra Kai, on paper, that show should have bombed. I mean, a sequel to The Karate Kid 30 years later? But it worked. Why? Because it understood what made the original matter. It didn't just bring back the characters. It brought back their struggles, their rivalries, and the goofy yet sincere tone of the original. It didn't try to reinvent The Karate Kid as a gritty reboot or a slapstick farce. It let Johnny still be Johnny, just 30 years older and still figuring it out. Then there's Top Gun Maverick. That movie could have been a nostalgia cash grab. Instead, it gave us callbacks and consequences. Maverick wasn't just flying jets. He was confronting mortality, legacy, and guilt. It updated the story without replacing the foundation. See, both did something key. They invited in old fans and welcomed new ones. No bait and switch, no shame for remembering the past. Now compare that to something like Cruel Intentions. To this day, I still get chills when I hear Bittersweet Symphony play, because that ending hit me in a way that stuck with me for decades, right? That feeling, I mean, I'm getting chills right now, right? That feeling is what the studio is borrowing from when they titled the new series the same as the original. But nostalgia without substance can backfire. Reddit user Critical0i put it bluntly: Cruel Intentions is a malnourished imitation of a cult classic. It's a series that highlights why Hollywood is losing consumers to other forms of entertainment. And then there's Linza White's comment, which hits the nail on the head. Had the show been titled something else, allowing it to stand on its own merit, it likely would have received a much fairer reception. Exactly. That's one of my core points. See, the same goes for the Powerpuff Girls live action leak. It promised an edgy, grown-up reboot, but everything in the script felt like it hated the original, like it was embarrassed by the joy, the color, and the camp that made the cartoon iconic. These projects didn't just reinterpret the IP, they rejected it, while still using the name to cash in. But look, tone shifts can absolutely work. Although Guillermo del Toro might disagree, Pan's Labyrinth has major Alice in Wonderland energy, but it wasn't marketed as Alice. If it had been, audiences would have rebelled, because clearly it's not Alice in Wonderland. Same with the series Yellow Jackets. The vibe is pure Lord of the Flies, but they never called it that. And because of that, the show stands on its own. That's the line. If the reboot, remake, or adaptation feels like it hates the original, or worse, like it's mocking the fans who loved it, you're not watching a tribute. You're watching a hit job in legacy cosplay. What studios keep underestimating is that people will go to war to defend the emotional connection they have to nostalgia. You're not just borrowing a brand, you're borrowing someone's childhood, someone's trauma, someone's sense of self. And you better treat it with care. If you're rebooting something nostalgic, here are the 3 bare minimum rules. 1. Keep the spirit. Even if you change the style, you can update the tone, visuals, or even genre, but the emotional DNA should still be there. 2. Acknowledge the original audience without pandering. Don't guilt-trip fans for showing up with expectations. If anything, thank them for caring enough to notice. 3. Don't use the name unless you mean it. Because if your show doesn't feel like the IP it's borrowing from, rename it. Let it stand on its own. If it's good, it'll thrive anyway. Now, these rules aren't about limiting creativity. They're about honesty. If you want to reinvent something, fine. But don't dress it in nostalgia and pretend it's the same show we grew up with, because that's what breaks the trust. Audiences aren't against change. I mean, most of us do like a good twist. We want to be surprised, but we don't want to be tricked. We don't want to walk in expecting to see an old friend and leave feeling like we got catfished by a brand name. That's what separates integrity from a scam wrapped in sentimentality. So the next time a studio trots out a beloved name, ask yourself, are they bringing it back because they love it or because they know you do and they're hoping that that's enough? Let me know in the comments what's the last show or movie you felt bait and switched you. And for more behind the scenes insights, check out this video right here.